our finest ambassadors of conservatism, your Senator, Marco Rubio.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Let me, Coach Bowden is a hard act to follow. Let me just tell you, now you can see why he won so many games. If Coach Biden got in your living room and recruited you and your family, you were going to sign with Florida State. And I say that as a Gator. Go Gators. Boo. We hadn't even started the season yet. What's wrong with you people? But it's a tough act to follow. Listen, I'm incredibly honored to be here with you today. Americans for Prosperity and all of you have been involved in the cause of freedom and liberty and the American dream since, well, for a long time, but certainly since the very beginning of when I got involved in public service. I want to stick to the topic with you for a few minutes on the issue of defending the American dream. And I think this is a term we just throw around all the time. We use that phrase, the American dream, so lightly. And yet there doesn't seem to be a lot of consensus over what it means. It means different things to different people. But for those of us involved in public policy, we need to clearly understand what the American dream is. I learned about the American dream from someone who wasn't even born an American. I want to tell you the story of Pedro Victor Garcia. Pedro Victor Garcia was born in 1899 in rural Cuba. He was one of 17 children born to a farming family, and they all worked on the land. He had polio when he was 6 years old, and so he couldn't work on the land. He lost the use of one of his legs, and so his family, in order to give him a chance to be able to feed himself, and hopefully a family one day, they sent him off to school to learn to read and to write, and he learned Morse code. As the years went on, he became semi-successful because he knew how to read. He was one of the few people in the city and the area that could. He would spend, one of his first jobs was he would sit in front of the cigar factories and he would read to the workers. Back then they didn't have television or radio, so he would sit in the front and read to the workers as they rolled their cigars, first newspapers and then novels. Years later, he would go on to have 7 daughters, and he would raise them as a disabled man in a developing country, and it was hard. You can just imagine how difficult it was for him to succeed. Because of political instability, the rise of communism in Cuba, he ultimately found himself here in the United States. And he remembers this extraordinary night in the summer of 1969. You see, he had been born in 1899 before there were even airplanes in the sky. But Pedro Victor Garcia, like much of the world, watched on a small black and white television in the summer of 1969 as an American stepped foot on the moon. And he remembers saying, "We Americans can do anything." I learned about the American dream from him because Pedro Victor Garcia was my grandfather. And I used to sit on the porch of our home as he would smoke one of his 3 daily cigars. And he would share with me his stories about growing up and the struggles he had faced. But I want you to understand the most powerful thing he taught me were not specific stories. The theme of the time we got to spend together was this: that because he had been born in a society where your future is determined by what your parents did for a living, where you came from, and where you started out, because he came from a society like that, it didn't matter how hard he worked, how long he tried, how good he was. Unless you got really lucky, you were limited how far you could go. But he also taught me that I was blessed because I had been born into perhaps the only society in all of human history where your future is not determined by how your last name is pronounced, where your future is not determined by how many people your parents know or how many jobs they could get you out of school, where your future is not determined by how much money your family made. Your future is determined by how hard you work, how good you are, how big you're willing to dream, and how much time you're willing to persevere to achieve it. That is at the heart of the American dream, because we have allowed the American dream to become commercialized. The American dream is not about how many things you own. It is not about how much money you make. The American dream is about having the opportunity and the liberty to do with your life what God has given you the talent and the vision to try to achieve. For someone who is blessed to be 6'9" and can play in the NBA and dunk a basketball, your dream may be to play basketball and make millions of dollars. And for someone who decides, I'm going to dedicate my life to serve others, so I'm going into ministry or into charitable work, it's the opportunity to do that too for $30,000. And yet no one would argue to you that the $30,000 worker who spends all day saving people from distress or serving our community is any less valuable than the person who makes millions of dollars a year. The American dream is not about how much money you make. The American dream is about the liberty and the opportunity to achieve the talent and the God-given dreams that you've been given. Now, but this is the universal hope. People all over the world want that chance. Why is it called the American dream when people all over this planet have it? And the answer is because while that has been the dreams of people all over this planet, nowhere in the history of mankind has that been true for more people than it has been for us here. Why? Is it because God loves America more than he loves Belgium? No. Is it because we're smarter or more talented? Not necessarily. The reason why the American dream is possible is because over 2 centuries ago, an extraordinary collection of human beings who were blessed to live at the same place at the same time founded an extraordinary nation. They did it by taking on the most powerful empire on the planet, on the fundamental belief that your rights do not come from the king or from the government, your rights come from your creator, and that the job of government is to protect those rights, not to decide them. Because your rights come from God and not from your leaders, it is the job of government to protect those rights. And so they designed a limited system of government where the power and the decisions reside in our people, not in government. They created a republic with a federal government that was supposed to be limited in its scope and in its scale, where to the extent government was involved, it was involved at the local and the state level because they knew people would have more influence there. They designed a system of government in which power was diffuse. They didn't put all the power in the hands of a president or all the power in the hands of a Congress and a prime minister and a parliament system or in the hands of the court. Instead, they divided them among multiple branches, including 2 within the legislative branch, because they understood human nature and they understood what people were capable of doing, even good people, when they had too much power. They also designed a system of economics they embraced. It's called free enterprise. A free enterprise system in which you are judged by your merit, by the quality of your ideas and your product. A free enterprise system in which an employee can become an employer, where a worker can become an owner, where someone can start a business out of the spare bedroom of their home. And the result of limited government based on our Constitution and free enterprise resulted in the most extraordinary nation in all of human history. There's never been anything like America. And even today, with all of our problems, what country in the world would you trade places with? What nation on this planet do you look to and say, I wish we were them? But what we have is special. And things that are special are hard. The ordinary is easy. The average happens on its own. But what's special requires hard work and sacrifice. And that is our story too. For over 2 centuries, each generation of Americans has confronted great challenges. Every single one. There has never been a time in our nation's history where we've had it easy. We were founded in a revolution taking on the most powerful empire in the world. We had a civil war that almost ended the young country. We had a First World War that was bloody. And then we had a Great Depression. And then a Second World War. And then a long Cold War. The 60s bitterly divided this nation. We have never had it easy because what we have is special. And the reason why the America you inherited and I inherited is so unique is because the people who came before us did what had to be done. Each generation before us confronted their challenges and they solved their problems. And so for over 240 years, each generation of Americans has left the next better off than themselves. My friends, the time has come for us to do the same. The moment has arrived for this generation to do its part. And this nation must make a choice in which direction it wants to go. There are only two ways forward from this point. If we stay on the road we are on right now, the road that abandons our Constitution and abandons free enterprise, I am sad to say that our children and our grandchildren will be the first Americans in our history to inherit a country worse off than the one their parents inherited. We will be the first Americans ever to leave our children worse off than ourselves. But there is another road before us. It is the road of re-embracing free enterprise, of taking our cause to people around this country and explaining to them that big government, it helps the people that have already made it. They can hire the lobbyists and the lawyers and the accounting firms to help them navigate big government, but it crushes the little guy. We can make the argument to them that our constitutional system of limited government is better for them and for their hopes and their dreams for their families. And if we re-embrace free enterprise and we re-embrace limited government, then our children are going to be the freest and the most prosperous Americans that have ever lived. That is the opportunity before us. Not just to defend the American dream, but to expand it, to reach more people and change more lives than ever before. That is the unique challenge and opportunity of our time to usher in that new American century, where America will be freer or more prosperous than it has ever been. That's what this cause is about. That is what your work is about. That is why I've chosen public service. And that is why I'm grateful to come every time you gather here in Florida or anywhere in the country and join you in this important cause, so that we can leave for our children what our parents left us, the single greatest nation in the history of all of mankind. Thank you and God bless you. Thank you very much. Thank you.